Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the main window. The ship was small compared to the big military vessels back home, but it was perfect for their mission. They were here to study new forms of life, not to fight wars. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings on the scanner," said Amy Watson from her seat at the communications desk. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and quick fingers that danced across her. Control panel. Jake walked over to look at the screen. "What kind of readings?" "Big ship, sir. Really big. It's coming our way fast." Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her research station. She had been studying samples of space dust they collected near the Kepler 442 system. Could it be another human ship? "No way," said Pete Collins, the ship's engineer. He was a big man with rough hands from years of fixing machines. "That thing is huge. 5 times bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake felt his stomach tighten. They were far from home, in a part of space where humans had never been before. If this wasn't a human ship, then they were about to meet aliens for the first time. "Try to contact them," Jake ordered Amy. "Send them our peaceful greeting message." Amy pressed buttons on her panel. "Sending now, Captain." They waited. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Everyone watched the screen, hoping to see a friendly response. Instead, the alien ship fired at them. A bright blue beam hit the New Horizon, and all the lights went out. The ship shook like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Jake grabbed onto his chair to keep from falling. "What happened?" he shouted. "They hit us with some kind of pulse weapon," Pete called out in the darkness. "All our main systems are down. I'm trying to get emergency power back online." Small red lights came on, giving the bridge a scary glow. Jake could see his crew's faces, and they all looked worried. "Are we dead in the water?" Jake asked. "Pretty much," Pete said. "Engines are dead. Weapons are dead. Even our radio is barely working." Through the window, they could see the alien ship getting closer. It was dark gray with strange curves and spikes sticking out from its sides. It looked like a giant sea creature from the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. "Captain," Amy sighed, her voice shaking, "they are sending us a message." "Put it on the speaker." A deep, harsh voice filled the bridge. The words were in English, but the accent was strange and frightening. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Jake looked around at his crew. They were scientists, not soldiers. They had no way to fight back against such a powerful ship. "Send them a message," Jake said to Amy. "Tell them we surrender." Within an hour, alien soldiers came aboard the New Horizon. They wore thick armor that covered their entire bodies. Jake could see they had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces looked like giant insects. Their eyes were black and cold. The aliens moved through the ship quickly, rounding up all 12 crew members. They pushed the humans into the ship's dining area and made them sit on the floor. One of the aliens, bigger than the others, stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was the same one they had heard on the radio. "I am Commander Zektar of the Zephyrian Empire. You are now prisoners of war." "We're not at war with anyone," Jake said, standing up slowly. "We're scientists. We came here to study plants and animals, not to fight." Zektar made a sound that might have been laughter. "All ships in this sector belong to our enemies. This Corvani. You are Corvani spies." "We're not Corvani," Dr. Parker said. "We're humans. We come from a planet called Earth." "Lies," Zektar said. "But it does not matter. You are prisoners now. That's when the accident happened." One of the alien soldiers was examining the ship's power systems when something went wrong. A plasma conduit exploded in the laboratory section, sending hot metal flying everywhere. Doctor Parker had been standing near the lab door when it happened. The explosion threw her across the hallway, and she hit the wall hard. When the smoke cleared, she was on the floor, not moving. "Lisa!" Jake shouted, running to her side. "Ben Rodriguez." The ship's medical officer pushed past the alien guards to reach her. He was a quiet man who usually kept to himself, but now his training took over. "She's badly hurt," Ben said, checking her pulse. "Internal bleeding, maybe a broken spine. I need to get her to the medical bay right now." Zektar watched as the humans gathered around their injured crew member. In Zephyrian culture, wounded soldiers who could not fight were left behind. It was the way of survival. The strong lived, the weak died, but these humans acted differently. They picked up Dr. Parker carefully and carried her to their small medical bay. Ben worked over her with tools and medicines, while the others took turns watching and helping. "Interesting," said another alien, smaller than Zektar. This was science. Officer Velthara. "They are wasting resources on a damaged unit." "It shows weakness," Zektar said. "They do not understand survival." But he kept watching as the humans worked to save their friend. Jake stayed by Dr. Parker's side, even when the aliens told him to move. Pete and Amy took turns bringing Ben whatever he needed. The other crew members gave up their own food and water to make sure Ben could focus on helping Lisa. Hours passed. Dr. Parker was still alive, but barely. Ben had done everything he could with their limited supplies, but she needed better medical equipment to survive. Zektar found himself confused by what he was seeing. In all his years as a warrior, he had never seen soldiers act this way. When a Zephyrian was wounded in battle, the others would honor them and then move on. It was practical. It was efficient. These humans were doing something else entirely. They were sacrificing their own comfort and safety for one person who might not even live. It made no sense from a military standpoint. "Commander," said a young Zephyrian engineer named Crix, "why do the humans act this way?" "I do not know," Zektar admitted. "Perhaps it is some form of religious ritual. Or maybe they are simply weak and foolish." But as he watched Jake Morrison hold Dr. Parker's hand and whisper encouraging words to her unconscious form, Zektar began to wonder if there was something more to human behavior than simple weakness. The other crew members worked in shifts, making sure someone was always with Lisa. They cleaned her wounds, monitored her breathing, and shared their own medical supplies to keep her alive. They did this even though the aliens had made it clear that cooperation might earn them better treatment. Instead of thinking about themselves, the humans thought only of saving their friend. Zektar had conquered many worlds and defeated many enemies, but he had never seen anything quite like this before. 3 days had passed since Dr. Parker was injured, and her condition was getting worse. Ben Rodriguez had not slept more than 2 hours at a time. His eyes were red and tired, but he kept working to keep Lisa alive. Commander Zektar watched from the doorway of the medical bay. The human doctor was using primitive tools, but he worked with the skill of someone who truly cared about his patient. This was strange to Zektar. In his culture, doctors were efficient and cold. They saved who they could and moved on quickly from those they could not help. "Your friend is dying," Zektar told Jake Morrison. "Why do you waste time and resources on her?" Jake looked up from where he sat beside Lisa's bed. His face was tired, but his eyes were determined. "Because she's our friend. We don't leave people behind." "That is not logical," Zektar said. "She cannot help you now. She only uses up your food and water. Your doctor could be taking care of the rest of you instead." "That's not how humans work," Jake said simply. Zektar found this answer unsatisfying. He had studied many species during his military career. Most followed the basic rules of survival. The strong protected the strong. The weak were abandoned when they became a burden. These humans seemed to follow different rules entirely. Science Officer Vel Farah entered the medical bay, carrying a small recording device. She had been documenting human behavior since they came aboard. Her research might be valuable to the Zephyrian Empire. The humans continue their inefficient behavior patterns, she reported to Ziktar. They have given the injured female the best food and the most comfortable sleeping area. The others eat less and sleep on the floor so she can have the bed. Have you discovered why they do this? Zektar asked. I believe it is a form of pack-bonding ritual, Belthara said. Many primitive species show loyalty to their group members. But this level of sacrifice for a non-productive individual is highly unusual. Jake Morrison could hear them talking, but he pretended not to understand. In reality, he was listening carefully to every word. Amy Watson had managed to fix their translation software before the aliens found it, and now they could understand everything the Zephyrians said. The humans had learned a lot about their captors over the past 3 days. They knew that Zephyrians valued strength above all else. They knew that the aliens thought humans were weak because they cared for their injured. Most importantly, they knew that the aliens were not watching them as carefully as they should. While Ben worked to save Lisa, the other crew members had been busy. Pete Collins had been studying the alien ship's design every time they moved him through the corridors. Amy Watson had been listening to radio chatter and learning about Zephyrian communication systems. The others had been mapping the ship's layout and observing the guards' routines, but they did all of this while appearing to focus only on Dr. Parker's care. The aliens saw humans bringing food to the medical bay and thought it was wasteful. They saw crew members taking turns sitting with Lisa and thought it was emotional weakness. They never suspected that these same crew members were sharing intelligence and planning their next moves. The injured human grows weaker, observed Crix, the young Zephyrian engineer. He had been assigned to watch the prisoners, and he found their behavior fascinating. Why do they not prepare for her death? Because humans are foolish, said another guard. They cannot accept reality. But Crix was not so sure. He had noticed things the other guards missed. When the humans thought no one was watching, their conversations were quiet and focused. They asked each other specific questions about the ship's systems and the guards' schedules. This did not seem like the behavior of people lost in grief. On the 4th day, Dr. Parker took a turn for the worse. Her breathing became shallow, and her skin turned pale. Ben Rodriguez looked exhausted and defeated. I've done everything I can, he told Jake quietly. Without better equipment, she's not going to make it. Jake nodded, but his expression was thoughtful rather than sad. How much time does she have? Maybe a day, maybe less. That evening, Jake Morrison requested a meeting with Commander Zektar. The alien leader agreed, curious about what the human captain might want to discuss. They met in Zektar's private office, a large room filled with weapons and battle trophies from his many victories. Jake looked small and weak compared to the powerful Zephyrian commander. My crew member is dying, Jake said without introduction. Your medical bay could save her life. Ziktar made the sound that passed for laughter among his people. Why would I waste medical resources on a dead human? Because I can offer you something valuable in return, Jake said. What could you possibly have that the Zephyrian Empire would want? Jake leaned forward in his chair. Agricultural technology, terraforming techniques, ways to make dead planets grow food and support life. This got Zektar's attention. The Zephyrian Empire was always expanding, always looking for new worlds to conquer. But many of the planets they found were barely habitable. Technology that could transform barren worlds into garden planets would be extremely valuable. You would trade this technology for one dying human? Zektar asked. Yes, Jake said without hesitation. Zektar studied the human captain's face. Jake looked desperate, like someone who would do anything to save his friend. This confirmed what Zektar already believed about human weakness. Very well, Zektar decided. We will try to save your friend. But if she dies anyway, you will still give us this technology. Agreed, Jake said. What Zektar did not know was that this conversation was exactly what Jake had been hoping for. The humans had been planning this moment since their second day of captivity. They needed access to the Zephyrian medical bay, not just to save Lisa, but to complete their real mission. As Jake left the commander's office, he passed Crix in the corridor. The young Zephyrian engineer was pretending to work on a wall panel, but Jake could tell he was actually listening. Interesting meeting? Crix asked quietly. Jake looked surprised that the alien had spoken to him directly. I hope so. I just want to save my friend. Your species is very loyal to each other, Crix observed. We try to be, Jake said. Then he added, almost casually, sometimes loyalty is the only thing that keeps you alive in dangerous situations. Crix thought about this comment long after Jake had returned to the medical bay. There was something in the human's tone that suggested deeper meaning. But before Crix could analyze it further, he was called away to other duties. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Jake quietly told his crew about the agreement with Zektar. To any watching aliens, it looked like he was sharing good news about Lisa's treatment. In reality, he was giving final instructions for the next phase of their plan. Ben, you'll go with Lisa to their medical bay, Jake said softly. Pete, Amy, and I will be allowed to visit. That should be enough. Enough for what? Whispered Amy. Jake's smile was barely visible, but it was there. Enough to finish what we started. Dr. Parker was moved to the Zephyrian medical bay that night. Their equipment was far more advanced than anything the humans had, and Lisa's condition began to improve almost immediately. Ben Rodriguez worked alongside the Zephyrian medical staff, learning their techniques and studying their technology. To the aliens, he appeared grateful and eager to help save his colleague. They had no idea that he was also memorizing everything he saw for later use. Commander Zektar was satisfied with the arrangement. He would get valuable human technology, and the humans would stop their annoying emotional displays over their dying crew member. Everyone would benefit. Science Officer Valthara continued her observations, noting how the humans' behavior changed once their friend began recovering. They seemed more relaxed, more cooperative. This supported her theory that their earlier actions had been driven by primitive pack instincts rather than strategic thinking. Only Crix remained suspicious. He had noticed that the humans asked very specific questions about the medical equipment. They wanted to know how it worked, where the controls were, and what other systems it connected to. These seemed like strange questions for people who were simply grateful for help, but when Crix mentioned his concerns to his superior officers, they dismissed him as inexperienced. The humans were clearly weak and emotional. There was no need to worry about them. This was exactly what the humans were counting on. Dr. Lisa Parker opened her eyes for the first time in 6 days. The Zephyrian medical bay was much brighter than the human ship's medical room, and the air smelled like metal and strange chemicals. But she was alive, and her mind was clear. Lisa? Ben Rodriguez leaned over her bed, his face showing relief and exhaustion. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck, she said weakly. But I'm thinking straight. That's good. Ben nodded and glanced around the medical bay. 2 Zephyrian medical officers were working at computer stations nearby, but they were not paying attention to the human conversation. Listen carefully, Ben whispered. We don't have much time. Jake needs to know you're ready. Ready for what? Lisa asked, but her eyes were already showing understanding. She had been the ship's biologist, but before that, She had been something else entirely. "The plan we discussed before you got hurt," Ben said quietly. "Everything is in place." Lisa nodded slowly. She remembered now. The accident had been real, and her injuries had been serious. But she also remembered the conversation she'd had with Jake Morrison just before the plasma conduit exploded. They had been discussing what to do if they were captured by hostile aliens. The plan they had made was risky and complicated. It required the aliens to underestimate them completely, and it required one of the crew members to be in a position where they could access the alien ship's most secure systems. "Have they been watching us closely?" Lisa asked. "Not as closely as they should," Ben replied. "They think we're harmless. They think our concern for you was just emotional weakness." Lisa smiled despite her pain. "Then they don't understand humans very well." She was right. Commander Zektar and his crew had completely misunderstood what they were seeing. They thought human loyalty was a weakness that could be exploited. They had no idea that it was actually a strength that allowed humans to work together in ways that other species could not imagine. Over the past week, while the aliens focused on what they saw as wasteful behavior, the human crew had been conducting the most thorough intelligence operation of their lives. Every time someone brought food to Lisa, they also shared information about guard schedules and ship systems. Every time someone sat with her during her unconscious periods, they also memorized the layout of corridors and the locations of important equipment. The aliens saw crying humans who could not accept their friend's condition. In reality, they were looking at trained observers who were mapping every detail of their prison. Jake Morrison arrived at the medical bay that afternoon, supposedly to check on Lisa's progress. Commander Zektar accompanied him, curious to see the human captain's reaction to his friend's recovery. "She looks much better," Jake said, and his relief seemed completely genuine. "Your medical technology is impressive," Jake told Zektar. "Much more advanced than ours." "Of course it is," Zektar replied with pride. "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered half the galaxy. We have the best of everything." Jake nodded respectfully, but his eyes were taking in every detail of the medical bay. He noted the location of computer terminals, the types of security cameras, and the number of guards. Most importantly, he saw that Lisa was connected to the main computer network through her monitoring equipment. "Would it be possible for Dr. Rodriguez to continue working here?" Jake asked. "He's learned so much from your medical staff. It would help him take better care of the rest of us." Zektar considered this request. Having the human doctor work in the medical bay would be useful. Ben Rodriguez had proven to be skilled and cooperative, and it would give the aliens more opportunities to study human behavior. "Very well," Zektar agreed, "but he will be watched at all times." "Of course," Jake said. "We understand." What Zektar did not understand was that this arrangement gave the humans exactly what they needed. Ben Rodriguez was not just a doctor. Before joining the crew of the New Horizon, he had been a military intelligence specialist. His medical training was real, but his knowledge of computer systems and security protocols was even more extensive. That night, while the aliens believed he was simply monitoring Lisa's recovery, Ben began accessing the Zephyrian computer network. The medical monitoring system was connected to the ship's main computers, and Ben's years of intelligence training had taught him how to exploit such connections. He worked slowly and carefully, making sure his activities looked like normal medical procedures. When he typed commands on the computer keyboard, it appeared that he was adjusting Lisa's treatment. When he accessed new files, it seemed like he was checking medical databases. The information he gathered was incredible. The Zephyrian ship was not just a military vessel. It was the flagship of a major invasion fleet. The aliens were planning to attack 3 human colonies that had been established in nearby star systems. They had detailed maps of human settlements, information about Earth's defenses, and plans for a full-scale war. But Ben also discovered something else. The Zephyrians were not the only hostile species in this part of space. Their real enemies, the Corvani, were much more dangerous than the aliens had admitted. The Zephyrians were actually running away from a major defeat, and their invasion of human space was a desperate attempt to find new territory before the Corvani destroyed them. Completely. This information changed everything. The humans were not just prisoners who needed to escape. They were intelligence agents who had stumbled onto the most important military secret in the galaxy. Ben shared his discoveries with Lisa during their quiet moments together. As a former intelligence officer herself, she immediately understood the implications. They needed to get this information back to Earth as quickly as possible. "Can you access their communication system?" Lisa asked quietly. "Not from here," Ben whispered. "But if we can get to the main communications center, I think I can send a message to human space." "What about their weapons and shields?" "I'm learning about those too," Ben said. "Pete has been asking good questions about their engineering systems. Amy has been listening to their radio traffic. We're getting a complete picture of their capabilities." Lisa nodded. "Then we need to finish this soon." "How long before they expect you to transfer that agricultural technology to them?" "Jake has been stalling, but they're getting impatient. Maybe 2 more days." "That should be enough time," Lisa said. Meanwhile, in other parts of the ship, the rest of the human crew was completing their own assignments. Pete Collins had identified the main power distribution center and learned how to shut down specific ship systems. Amy Watson had mapped the entire communication network and knew exactly which signals to jam and which to boost. The other crew members had been studying guard rotations, emergency procedures, and escape routes. They had also been observing the aliens' personal habits and psychological weaknesses. Everything was almost ready. But the humans still needed one more thing: a reason to access the ship's most secure areas without arousing suspicion. That opportunity came sooner than expected. On Lisa's 3rd day in the Zephyrian medical bay, alarms began sounding throughout. The ship, Commander Zektar, rushed to the bridge, followed by most of his senior officers. Emergency lights flashed red, and the ship's engines changed their tone to a higher, more urgent pitch. "What's happening?" Jake asked one of the remaining guards. "Corvani patrol ships," the guard replied nervously. 3 of them, moving fast toward our position. Through the medical bay windows, the humans could see distant flashes of light as the Corvani ships fired on the Zephyrian vessel. The ship shook with each impact, and some of the medical equipment sparked and went dark. "We need to move Dr. Parker to a safer location," Ben told the alien medical staff. "Where?" asked the chief medical officer, a female Zephyrian named Healer. Zara. Ben pretended to think about it. "A central computer core area would be safest. It's the most heavily protected part of the ship." This was exactly where the humans needed to go to complete their mission. The computer core contained the main communication systems, the primary weapon controls, and the navigation database. If they could reach it during the confusion of the battle, they might be able to accomplish everything at once. Healer Zara agreed to the move. With alarms blaring and explosions shaking the ship, her only concern was protecting her patient. She did not notice that Ben Rodriguez was carrying several pieces of portable medical equipment that looked suspiciously like communication devices. As they moved through the corridors toward the computer core, Jake Morrison and Amy Watson joined them, supposedly to help carry Lisa's medical equipment. Pete Collins appeared as well, claiming that he needed to check the power systems in the core area. The Zephyrian guards were too distracted by the battle to pay close attention to the human movements. They were focused on the Corvani attack, not on their supposedly harmless prisoners. Young Engineer Crix, however, was watching. He had been assigned to monitor the power distribution systems during the battle. and he saw the humans moving toward the most secure part of the ship. Something about their behavior still bothered him. The humans moved with purpose and coordination that seemed strange for people who were simply trying to protect their injured friend. They asked specific questions about the computer core's security, systems, and requested access to areas that had nothing to do with medical care. Why do you need to check the communication arrays? Crix hid behind a support beam near the computer core entrance, watching as the humans set up their equipment. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dr. Lisa Parker was not unconscious on her medical bed. She was sitting up, working on a portable computer that definitely was not medical equipment. Her movements were quick and precise, like someone who had used such devices many times before. Ben Rodriguez was not checking her medical condition. He was connected to the main computer system, downloading files at incredible speed. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the skill of an expert, not the hesitation of someone learning to use alien technology. Jake Morrison was not a worried captain trying to protect his crew. He was giving quiet, professional orders to his team, coordinating their activities like a military commander planning an attack. Amy, how long until you can access their communication system? Jake asked. 2 more minutes, Amy Watson replied. She was working on a control panel, connecting human devices to Zephyrian systems. I can send our signal on multiple frequencies to make sure it gets through. Pete, what's the status on their weapons? I can shut down their main guns anytime you give the word, Pete Collins said. He was not checking power systems for safety. He was learning how to disable them. Their shield generators are on a separate system, but I think I can overload them. If needed. Crix felt sick to his stomach. The humans had been lying about everything. They were not weak, emotional creatures who cared too much about their injured. They were spies and saboteurs who had been planning this operation from the beginning. How much time do we have? Lisa asked Jake. The Corvani attack won't last long, Jake replied. Zektar will either win or retreat within the next hour. Either way, we need to be ready to move. Ready to move where? Ben asked. Jake's smile was cold and calculating. Home, with everything we've learned about Zephyrian technology and their invasion plans. Lisa nodded and continued typing on her computer. I'm uploading their entire military database to our ships back home. Fleet Command is going to be very interested in this information. Crix realized that he needed to warn Commander Zektar immediately. These humans were not prisoners. They were enemy agents conducting the most successful intelligence operation in Zephyrian history. But as he started to move, Amy Watson spoke again. Jake, I'm picking up human signals. There's a whole fleet out there, positioned around the Corvani ships. How many ships? Jake asked. At least 20, maybe more. They've been following us since we were captured. Pete Collins laughed quietly. The aliens thought they caught a small research vessel. They actually caught the bait in the biggest trap the human fleet has ever set. Crix stopped moving. The full scope of what was happening began to sink in. The New Horizon had not been captured by accident. It had been sent here deliberately, with a crew trained for exactly this situation. The humans had wanted to be captured so they could gather intelligence from inside a Zephyrian ship. Everything the aliens had seen as mercy and weakness had been carefully planned deception. The humans had used their own emotions as camouflage. For a military operation, is the transmission ready? Jake asked Amy. Yes, sir. All the data Ben and Lisa collected, plus real-time information about this ship's location and capabilities. I can send it all in one burst transmission. Do it, Jake ordered. Amy pressed a button, and lights flashed on her equipment. Somewhere in space, human ships were receiving detailed information about Zephyrian technology, battle plans, and weaknesses. Now for Phase 2, Jake said. Lisa Parker stood up from her medical bed. She moved easily, without any sign of the injuries that had supposedly brought her close to death. "How do you want to handle Zektar?" "Carefully," Jake replied. "We still need to get off this ship alive. But first, we're going to make sure they can't use it to hurt anyone." Pete Collins was already working on the ship's main systems. "I can disable their engines and weapons, but it will take a few minutes. Make it look like battle damage from the Corvani," Jake instructed. "We don't want them to know what really happened until we're long gone." Ben Rodriguez had finished downloading files and was now working on something else. "I'm planting some surprises in their computer system. If they try to attack human colonies with the information they have, they're going to get some very unpleasant surprises." Crix wanted to run and warn his commander, but he was trapped. If he moved now, the humans would see him. If he stayed hidden, he would have to watch them complete their sabotage of his ship. The battle outside was reaching its climax. Explosions shook the ship as Corvani weapons found their targets. But Crix now realized that the real battle was happening right here in the computer core. "Jake," Amy said urgently, "the Corvani are retreating. Zektar will be coming back to check on the core system soon. How much more time do you need, Pete?" 30 seconds for the engines, 2 minutes for the weapons. "Lisa, Ben, pack up your equipment. We need to be back in medical positions before anyone comes looking for us." The humans moved with practiced efficiency, disconnecting their devices and hiding their real equipment among the medical supplies. Lisa lay back down on her bed and closed her eyes, instantly looking weak and injured again. Ben resumed his position at the medical monitoring station, calling up displays that made it look like he was checking her vital signs. Pete closed the access panels he had been working on, leaving no sign that the ship's systems had been tampered with. Within minutes, they looked exactly like they had when they first arrived. Concerned friends caring for an injured crew member in the safest part of the ship. But Crix had seen the truth. He knew that these humans were not what they appeared to be. The question was, what should he do about it? Commander Zektar arrived at the computer core 10 minutes later, accompanied by several guards and technical officers. The Corvani attack had been repelled, but the ship had suffered damage. "How is the human female?" Zektar asked healer Chixara. "She is stable," the Zephyrian doctor replied. "The human doctor has been monitoring her constantly. They are very dedicated to her care." Zektar looked at the humans, who appeared exactly as he expected, tired, worried, and focused entirely on their injured friend. It confirmed everything he believed about human weakness and inefficiency. "We will return her to the medical bay now," Zektar decided. "The danger has passed." As the humans prepared to move Lisa back to the medical bay, Jake Morrison approached Zektar. "Commander, I want to thank you for protecting Dr. Parker during the battle. Your actions saved her life." "It was nothing," Zektar replied, pleased by the human's gratitude. "When you provide us with your agricultural technology, we will consider the debt settled." "Of course," Jake said. "I'll have the information ready for you tomorrow." Zektar nodded, satisfied. The human captain seemed appropriately grateful and cooperative. There would be no trouble from these prisoners. As the group moved back toward the medical bay, Crix followed at a distance. He watched Jake. The prisoner exchange took place 6 hours later in the neutral space between the human and Zephyrian fleets. Admiral Susan Blake commanded 12 human warships that had appeared as if from nowhere. Commander Zektar brought only his damaged flagship, surrounded by vessels that outgunned him 3-1. "I don't understand," Zektar said to his science officer as they watched the human fleet maneuver into position. "Where did so many ships come from?" Valthara checked her instruments again, but the readings remained the same. "They've been following us for over a week, Commander. They were hidden behind sensor shadows and asteroid fields. We never detected them." On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Blake reviewed the intelligence reports that Jake Morrison's team had transmitted. The information was beyond valuable. The humans now knew everything about Zephyrian military capabilities, invasion, plans, and political weaknesses. Captain Morrison's team performed exceptionally, she told her staff. They've given us everything we need to defend human space and negotiate from a position of strength. The exchange itself was simple. The 12 human crew members returned to their own ships, while Commander Zektar received detailed agricultural technology, as promised. Both sides honored their agreements exactly, but as the human fleet prepared to leave, Admiral Blake opened a final communication channel to Zektar's ship. "Commander," she said, "I want you to understand something important. What happened here was not an accident." Zektar's image appeared on the screen, his insect-like features showing confusion. "What do you mean? My people didn't stumble into your territory by mistake. We came here specifically to meet you. We wanted to learn about the Zephyrian Empire before you learned about humanity." The alien commander's expression changed to one of shock. "You sent that ship as bait?" "We sent that ship as an introduction," Admiral Blake corrected. Captain Morrison and his crew volunteered for a first contact mission that we knew would probably result in their capture. They were prepared for exactly what happened. But they seemed so weak, so emotional about their injured crew member. Admiral Blake smiled. "Commander, let me explain something about humans. We don't abandon our people because loyalty makes us stronger, not weaker. When we care for our injured, we're not wasting resources. We're ensuring that valuable experience and knowledge survive." Dr. Parker's medical emergency wasn't a distraction. From their mission, it was an opportunity to complete it. Zektar felt the last of his assumptions crumbling. "They used our mercy against us." "No," Admiral Blake said firmly. "They used your assumptions against you. You assumed that mercy was weakness. You assumed that emotional behavior meant tactical stupidity. You assumed that a species that cares for its individuals cannot be a threat to your empire. And we were wrong. Completely wrong. Humans have been apex predators on our homeworld for hundreds of thousands of years. But we didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more cooperative than anything else on our planet." Admiral Blake's expression became serious. "We hunt in packs, Commander. We share information across vast distances. We sacrifice for each other because it makes the group stronger. And we're very, very good at making other predators underestimate us until it's too late." Young engineer Crix, listening from his position on Zektar's bridge, finally understood what Jake Morrison had meant about humans being dangerous, precisely because they didn't look dangerous. "What happens now?" Zektar asked. "Now you return to your empire with the agricultural technology we promised, and the knowledge that humanity is not easy prey." Admiral Blake replied, "You tell your leaders that we're willing to trade and cooperate, but not to be conquered. And if the Empire decides to attack human space anyway?" Admiral Blake's smile was cold and predatory. "Then your leaders will discover that the Corvani aren't your only enemies anymore. And they'll learn that humans are much better at this kind of war than the Corvani ever were." The communication ended, and the human fleet vanished into hyperspace as quickly as it had appeared. Commander Zektar stood on his bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he had believed about strength and weakness. His mighty warship had been infiltrated and sabotaged by prisoners he had thought were helpless. His invasion plans had been stolen by creatures he had considered weak and emotional. Krix approached his commander carefully. "Sir, what should I include in my report?" Zektar looked at the young engineer, who had been the only one to suspect the truth about their human prisoners. "Write this: we encountered a new species that practices deception warfare at a level we have never seen before. They use their own apparent weaknesses as weapons. They turn mercy into camouflage and loyalty into intelligence operations. Should I recommend that the Empire avoid further contact with humans? Zektar thought about Admiral Blake's final warning and the casual way Jake Morrison had threatened to leave them dead in space. No, recommend that we treat them as equals and potential allies. Because if we treat them as enemies, they will teach us the same lesson they taught us today. Which lesson is that, sir? Zektar looked out at the stars where the human fleet had disappeared. That the most dangerous predators in the galaxy are the ones who convince you they're prey until the moment they strike. The Zephyrian Empire would remember this lesson for generations to come. And throughout the galaxy, other species would eventually learn the same truth about humanity. Their mercy was not weakness, their loyalty was not foolishness, and their compassion was not vulnerability. It was simply the way apex predators chose to hunt among the stars.